Is it time to say goodbye to the Syracuse and Georgetown rivalry?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, we're always free and available wherever you get your podcast. And on today's show, it is all things Syracuse basketball. The ACC schedule opponents were released. We'll talk about who Syracuse is facing at home, who Syracuse is facing on the road, and the fact that Syracuse has a massive opportunity to pick up a number of quad one wins next season, which will hopefully get them into the NCAA tournament. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But we're going to start the podcast talking about Syracuse and Georgetown and the fact that they are not expected to play each other this upcoming season. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. But before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Georgetown and Syracuse, an old Big East rivalry. It used to be two of the premier programs in college basketball going head-to-head twice, sometimes even 3 times a year. And now it appears that that rivalry, which was already hanging by a thread, may just be gone. It was announced yesterday by CBS Sports' John Rothstein that Georgetown and Syracuse are not expected to play against each other this upcoming season. First and foremost, I do find it a little strange because the ACC, and we'll talk about it later on here in the show, they changed their conference schedule for every single one of their teams. They're only going to play 18 conference games as opposed to 20. That gives every single team 2 extra non-conference games. I thought that was a way for Syracuse to keep the Georgetown rivalry alive and that they would play each other again this upcoming season, but they're not. But let's talk about this rivalry. Why is it not the same? I think there are 2 reasons for it. Number one, and a lot of you all probably share the same opinion, but Syracuse moving to the ACC in 2013-14 had a massive impact on the Syracuse-Georgetown rivalry. Why? They're not in the same conference. So you're going to play that opponent less than before. Simple as that, right? But really, aside from Syracuse moving to the Big East, I think the reason why the rivalry here has kind of lost its luster is because of the state of both programs. Quite frankly, these 2 schools, Syracuse and Georgetown, which used to be 2 of the premier programs in all of college basketball, they're not the same as what they once were. Now, that's not to say that Georgetown can't be good again or Syracuse can't be good again. We're hoping as Syracuse fans that at least Syracuse can be good again, right? And we want to get back to the NCAA tournament and be one of the top teams in the league. Maybe win a national championship in a few years. I don't know. I mean, we're Syracuse fans. We hope for that to happen. But both teams just have not been good in quite a while. They haven't been nationally relevant in quite a while. Syracuse has not made the NCAA tournament since 2021. And they really haven't been all that close since then either. The closest that they came to making the tournament was actually 2 years ago, the 2023-24 season, where they won 20 games, but it still wasn't enough for them to be even really considered on Selection Sunday. And Georgetown, quite frankly, they've only made the tournament once since 2015. That was in 2021, where they went on a massive run in the Big East tournament. Credit to them. And they were one of those bid stealers. And they lost very early in that tournament. I believe that if Syracuse and Georgetown were both still really good, top 25 programs in a year in and year out basis, that, yeah, maybe the rivalry wouldn't be the same as if they were in the same conference, but you don't need to be in the same conference to have a great rivalry. I mean, Louisville and Kentucky, they're not in the same conference. They have a great rivalry. Syracuse and Georgetown could have been something similar to that, but quite frankly, these teams have not been very good in quite a while, and so the rivalry has now lost its luster. So what about the future? None of this means that Syracuse and Georgetown will never play each other again, or that Syracuse and Georgetown will never be nationally relevant again. In fact, Syracuse and Georgetown have gone stretches where they don't play. When Syracuse moved to the ACC in 2013-14, they did not play for a couple seasons. The 2013-14 season, the 2014-15 season, the two schools did not play before playing each other, I believe, every single year from 2015-16 onward. But I think just both parties right now are taking a break. A 1-year gap, maybe? How long will it last? I don't know. But I think if you want to really see this rivalry again, you need both schools to be really good again. So for now, Georgetown has actually pivoted. I believe it was also announced yesterday, around the same time as the fact that Syracuse and Georgetown weren't really expected to play, that Georgetown is going to play a home-and-home series with North Carolina next season. So that's still Big East and ACC going head-to-head, and perhaps Syracuse can do something similar to that. I think that a home-and-home series with UConn or St. John's, those are two of the tougher opponents in the Big East. I still think that would be pretty cool. Bring back some old memories with those schools going head-to-head. Maybe they try for the quote-unquote easier opponents in the Big East. Maybe like a DePaul or a Seton Hall. Could do that instead. Or maybe Syracuse just avoids the Big East altogether next season when scheduling their non-conference games. Maybe they pick a couple of teams from the Big Ten or the Big 12. Possibilities are endless. Maybe they decide to pick two random schools to try to get to quote-unquote freebie wins where you try to win by 30 plus to boost your tournament resume. Maybe. There are a lot of different ways where Syracuse can try to fill the void of not having to play Georgetown this upcoming season. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it. What do you think of the Syracuse and Georgetown rivalry now? And what do you think Syracuse and Georgetown should do going forward? Should this be just a 1-year break? Should they go multiple years without playing? How would you like to see Syracuse fill its non-conference slate now that it's expected Georgetown will not be a part of it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. So that's it for the Syracuse and Georgetown non-conference schedule talk. Coming up, we'll talk about how the ACC schedule was released, and I'll give you my takeaways for Syracuse. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. The Oklahoma City Thunder are representing the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. The East, well, the Indiana Pacers, at the time of this recording, they lead the New York Knicks 3-1. So perhaps it'll be Indiana and OKC, or maybe the Knicks can stage a 3-1 series comeback. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up because you can head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. That's right, folks. Only $5. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we are about to discuss Syracuse basketball's ACC opponents for this upcoming season. But before we do that, I just want to shout out to each and every one of you who continue to subscribe to Locked On Syracuse each and every day. You all are truly the best. And hey, if you're new to this podcast, since you've made it this far already, you're already not halfway through, maybe about 30 to 40% through. If you could just do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, maybe just tell one or two of your Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Let's get back to the content. Syracuse basketball in their ACC opponents for this upcoming season. Syracuse, like the rest of the ACC, they are going to play 18 conference games this upcoming season as opposed to 20. And this is all done by the ACC to try to get more of their teams into the NCAA tournament. And to that, I say maybe the teams in the ACC, including Syracuse, should try to win more games as opposed to focusing on the conference schedule. But that's neither here nor there. We're also still waiting on the dates and the times for the opponents, but we do know the opponents as far as who Syracuse is going to play multiple times, who they're going to play at home, and who they're going to play on the road. So let's get to the schedule, okay? Playing twice. This will be a home game and a road game. You got Pittsburgh, and that's Syracuse's quote-unquote primary opponent, meaning that I assume that Syracuse and Pitt are going to play each other twice each and every year, one at home, one in on the road. And then you got North Carolina this season, home and on the road, and that's Syracuse's quote-unquote variable partner. And I guess that's the ACC or the ACC's way of saying that's your random opponent that you're going to play twice a year, and it's going to rotate each and every year. So maybe next year Syracuse plays Virginia twice, or maybe they play Stanford twice, since we'll talk about it soon, that Syracuse doesn't have Stanford on the schedule. Now, as far as who's home and who's on the road, we'll run through it very, very quickly here. California, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, SMU, Virginia Tech, all at home. And then on the road, you got Boston College, Duke, Georgia Tech, Louisville, NC State, Virginia, Wake Forest, not playing, Stanford. So Syracuse is not going to play Stanford during the regular season. The two schools could certainly meet in the conference tournament, but that's played at a neutral site anyway. So there's that. Let's get to the takeaways now that we've quickly run through the schedule here. Number one, there's no West Coast trip. Last year, Syracuse played 2 games on the West Coast. They played at Stanford and at Cal. They went 1-1 in those games. I am someone that, admittedly, I underestimate travel. It's maybe one of my faults. And the main reason why is because I don't want to hear about excuses about the travel and going to the West Coast nowadays. And you'll probably hear it. And you'll hear it on the ACC squad. This is being released at 6 p.m. Eastern. But if you haven't checked out ACC squad, that was out at 5 p.m. Eastern today. Yeah, I don't really care about travel all that much because of modern technology. But hey, players seem to care about it. Coaches seem to care about it. A lot of fans seem to care about the travel. And the fact that Syracuse doesn't have a West Coast trip this upcoming season, I guess, is a good thing. I guess, selfishly, it's nice because there shouldn't be any abnormal tip-off times like there were last season. They were playing at Stanford and at Cal, and those games, I believe, started at 10 or 10:30 p.m. Eastern on the East Coast. That kind of stinks. So, seems like it's going to be all reasonable times for Syracuse in its ACC schedule this upcoming season. Another takeaway that I had is no Duke home game. As a recent graduate of Syracuse, 2024 to be exact, so I am a little over a year out of college now from the school, I can assure you, I can't speak for every student, but I can speak for hopefully many students, that the Duke game was always the game that was circled on the calendar. As far as this is the game that you got to go to from a student's perspective. Now, maybe there's a slight disconnect between the students and the fans, but generally for attendance speaking, I think they're kind of in line with this. The Duke game was always the biggest game on the schedule, and that's including Georgetown, who we spoke about in the first segment. The Duke game had all the luster. The Georgetown game has kind of lost it, right? Duke was always kind of the hot ticket. It's unfortunate, I guess, for the fans that Duke will not be coming to town. I guess Syracuse still has North Carolina at home on the schedule, but they don't generate the same buzz like Duke. I remember when North Carolina came to the Dome a couple years ago and Syracuse pulled off that massive upset, which we can talk about later on here in the show. Just wasn't the same as when Syracuse would maybe pull off an upset against a team like Duke, or that legendary battle that the two schools had in 2014. So those are just a couple of takeaways so far here for Syracuse's ACC opponents. Number one, there's no West Coast trip, which I guess is really nice. And number two, the Duke home game this year, well, there is no Duke home game this season. I guess their most marquee opponent at home is going to be North Carolina, at least in conference. We'll see who Syracuse decides to schedule out of conference. Maybe there's the ACC SEC Challenge. Maybe they get a compelling opponent there. So that's where we're at right now, but there's still plenty more to talk about. Syracuse has a tremendous opportunity with their schedule, and that's coming up next here on Locked On Syracuse. There are a couple more takeaways I had when seeing the opponent breakdown for Syracuse basketball in the ACC this upcoming season. Before we get to them, though, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. When you saw the schedule released, or maybe you're hearing it for the first time, what was your takeaway from it? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below here. They got a really difficult road schedule. How about that? Let's start there. Syracuse's road schedule on paper in the ACC. Oh boy. At Duke. Uh-oh. Good luck going to Duke. Cameron Indoor. That's going to be fun, right? At Louisville. This is not Louisville with Kenny Payne anymore. This Louisville team is most likely going to be a top 10 preseason team in the country. And I don't think they're going to be one of those teams that disappoints either. They are probably going to be very, very good this upcoming season. They might win the ACC. That's how strong I believe Louisville is, at least on paper. And I really like Pat Kelsey as a head coach there. He's done a tremendous job turning around that Louisville program in literally a year. Literally. At North Carolina. Syracuse is 0-7 lifetime at UNC. So there's that. And then he got at NC State, which looks significantly better on paper than they did last season. Last season, NC State missed the ACC tournament. They missed it. And now, it looks like they're going to be a top 5 team in the ACC this upcoming year with new head coach Will Wade. They just got Darian Williams from Texas Tech out of the transfer portal. He is a monster. They have dramatically upgraded that roster. They've upgraded the head coach. They're probably an NCAA tournament team this upcoming season. We'll see how all the pieces fit together. Maybe that's their downfall. But talent-wise, they're much better. In fact, it's possible that Syracuse this upcoming season will play the 4 best teams in the ACC, all on the road. Now, again, should be noted with North Carolina that Syracuse will also face the Tar Heels at home. Great. You're going to play North Carolina also at home, who's probably going to be a pretty good team this upcoming season. You get to play them twice, and you also got 4 really tough road games. But with that being said, with such a tough road schedule, the takeaway really is this is a tremendous opportunity. Great moments are born from great opportunity. As head coach Herb Brooks said, he was the head coach of the 1980 U.S. Hockey Olympic team that won the gold medal and beat the Soviet Union, the Miracle on Ice. And if you haven't seen the movie Miracle, I highly suggest you check out that movie. It has nothing to do with basketball, but still, one of my all-time favorite movies. Those games that I mentioned, at Duke, at NC State, at North Carolina, right? Those really, really tough opponents, and I'm missing one more, at Louisville, right? Those are all potentially quad one games this upcoming season. And if you want to make the NCAA tournament, which we're Syracuse fans, I think for the most part, you got to win quad one games. You kind of have to beat one of these teams, maybe even two of these teams, and hopefully not get embarrassed by any of these teams. Lose by 5 instead of instead of losing by 25, right? Unless you're North Carolina next year, in which North Carolina outside of quad one went 21-1 as a team, you're going to have to win some quad one games like the ones that I just mentioned in order to make the NCAA tournament. And oh, by the way, it's another tremendous opportunity to break a little bit of a streak here, because Syracuse basketball, I did some research this morning, and you can fact check me on it. I've been wrong before, but I think I'm right on this one because I went through it multiple times. The last time Syracuse beat a ranked team on the road, you got to go back to 2020 at Virginia. At some point, Syracuse has got to beat one of these really good teams on the road, right? You have to think. At some point, it has to happen. Why not next season? That'd be nice. This next takeaway kind of goes hand in hand with what I just said. Because it's such a difficult road schedule, and even though it's a tremendous opportunity to pick up some really quality wins there, they're going to have to take advantage of being at home. They're going to have to take advantage of this home slate. They're going to have to run through it because the road schedule is just daunting, and that places even more importance on taking care of business at home. Funny enough, as bad as Syracuse was a year ago, they were a bad team. They were 5-5 in ACC play at home. And the year before that, where they were a decent team, like they won 20 games, but I don't think they were the greatest team on earth, right? Obviously. They still went 8-2 at home on their home floor. I remember the 2 losses. They had a meltdown at the end of the game against Florida State. It was really weird. And they also lost kind of a close game, but not really a close game, to Clemson that year at home. But here's the takeaway from that. If Syracuse has a decent team this upcoming season, they should still be a pretty good team at home. It's still tough to go into the Dome and win a game. But they have to be at least somewhat relevant, somewhat decent this upcoming season. I mean, we've seen Syracuse punch above their weight at home as recently as 2024. In 2024, Syracuse played I think they were maybe 7th in the country at the time where they played North Carolina. They beat them. They beat North Carolina at home a couple of years ago. When they played that same North Carolina team on the road a few weeks earlier, they got absolutely destroyed. So home court matters for Syracuse. And they're with 9 games at home this upcoming season in the ACC. They're at minimum going to have to go 6-3, but more likely it's going to be probably 7-2 or better in order to make the NCAA tournament with how difficult that road schedule is. That's the way I look at it. 6-3 or 7-2 minimum at home to make the NCAA tournament. What do you think? Can Syracuse do it? Can they win a couple of tough road games? Can they take care of business at home? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, as far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future, tomorrow, we got Poll Friday, Syracuse football's strongest position group on paper, quarterbacks, wide receivers, other. The votes are in. We'll go over it tomorrow. Then over the weekend, I think I'm going to record one podcast either on Saturday or on Sunday, and it's either going to be Syracuse football or Syracuse basketball breakout candidates this upcoming season. Whichever one I decide not to do over the weekend, that'll be a podcast for the next week. All right, so that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future. And thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show with football recruiting expert Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings each and every day. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. And you can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I will see you all again soon.